thank you for participating in the Humane Summit, a virtual speaker series brought to you by the Humane Education Coalition. This session is sponsored by the Griffin Press, the Humane Society of the United States, and Karen Patterson. We are grateful for your attendance today for Kimberly Korona's speaker session, Making Essential Connections. Kim is Senior Program Director at HEART, Humane Education Advocates Reaching Teachers. At HEART, she has developed curricula, taught humane education programs for youth of all ages, and conducted professional development trainings for educators. Kim received her BA from Goddard College, an MED from Cambridge College in affiliation with the Institute for Humane Education. At this time, I will pass things over to our speaker, Kim Korona.
Hello, my name is Kim Korona, and I'm the Senior Program Director for HEART. And I just want to thank the Humane Education Coalition for inviting me to participate in their first ever Humane Summit. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. So I want to start with a story. I'm going to talk about a woman who was on a video, and she was advocating for an end to the seal slaughter, and she was really passionate about it. And while she was advocating, an interviewer came up to her and asked her what she thought about the immigration crisis. And she responded that she didn't think it was her country's responsibility to open its doors to other people, because she was concerned that they would take the jobs away from her country's citizens and resources away. And what she didn't know was there was a woman watching this video who couldn't believe she could have so much compassion for an animal, another species, and have so little care and concern for the struggle of human beings. And I relate this to human education because I want us to think about what's our message when we're in the classroom. Is it to teach about one specific issue? I think that we have to recognize that when we're teaching this, whatever human education issues we're teaching, that it's a catalyst for which we're assisting youth in developing their moral philosophy, and that we have a big responsibility in the way that we teach, because we are shaping the ethics of youth, not by telling them what to think, but simply by discussing these issues. So it's not to say that everyone has to have the same position and opinion on issues facing people, other species in our natural world. But we can use humane education topics as a tool for teaching youth to develop their own moral philosophy and apply that to all beings in our environment. So what I'm proposing is that whatever topics you are focused on, to recognize that we're essentially teaching you to question how they see themselves within the world, and whether it's their direct treatment of other people, other species, or the planet, or their indirect treatment, that it's helping them to decide how they want to make consumer choices, daily decisions and actions in their personal lives, their workplace, their volunteerism, their civic involvement, and their advocacy. Humane education is an opportunity to provide a space where we question who we include in our circle of compassion and why. And this can happen in any program, whether we're discussing a specific issue, animal companion homelessness, workers' rights, or climate change. And the point is, if we frame it in a certain way where we say, this is one topic of many, where we're thinking about our relationship to others, and within that, expanding our knowledge, questioning our attitudes and behaviors, and then applying this perspective to other issues and other beings in the world. To teach through a comprehensive lens, I encourage you to consider the following. First, develop your essential question. What is the bigger concept related to your topic? So for example, at HEART, we developed a lesson called Food Fighters, Real Stories of Food Justice Advocates. And the lesson is focused on food justice and how we can make our food system healthier, more just, and more sustainable. But the essential question is, how can we ensure our communities are healthy, just, and sustainable? Now, youth certainly can't answer that question from this one lesson, but the idea is that they will apply what they learn about making their food system more healthy, more just, and more sustainable to other systems that affect the health, equity, and sustainability of their communities. The second element is making real-world connections, and making these connections, when possible, to people, animals, and the planet. Now, the idea is not to force connections when they're not there, but to make authentic connections when applicable into your curriculum. So, for example, we developed a unit on media literacy. And within that unit, we discuss how media literacy influences our own self-esteem, our relationship and how we look at others, our relationship to other species, and to the planet. And we question how media may mislead us into making purchasing choices that don't align with our authentic values through greenwashing, humane washing, and inaccurate information or hidden information. So we take media literacy and we apply it to people, other species, and the planet. We also want to include empathy and reverence. And I think it's a vital part of any humane education program to include empathy for other species, other people, or reverence for the natural environment, whatever your specific topic is. But within that, to encourage you to expand their empathy and the reverence to others. Next, promoting critical thinking. Today, more than ever, critical thinking is a vital skill for processing information and forming our opinions and our positions on various topics. If we effectively incorporate critical thinking into our Humane Ed programs, this skill can be applied to all aspects of someone's life and how they develop their opinions on any issue. We want to teach you to consider the reason people support an issue, the reason they oppose an issue, to look at it from all different perspectives, to question themselves, to question societal norms, and then come up with their own conclusions. And to encourage them to do this, not just on the specific topic that we're teaching, but with anything that they learn in life. And then finding win-win solutions. If we want to create a world that works for all, we want to create solutions that don't come at the expense of other people, other species, and the planet. So even if we have a specific issue, when we're thinking about solutions to that issue, we want to take others and our planet into consideration. And when we create solutions this way, we're really creating solutionary solutions, as coined by the Institute for Humane Education. And then we want to offer opportunities for service learning. And at Heart, sometimes we have limited time with youth, so we're not always able to facilitate a long-term solutionary solution. But we have students think in that frame of mind, and then we provide opportunities to do mini service projects where they can at least do some type of action related to the topic, and hopefully that will inspire them for whatever issues they're concerned about to later do larger systemic change. So the way that I frame programs is to demonstrate connections, I think, of by having a focus in the center and then considering how that focus relates to people, animals, or other species, and the natural world. So for example, if I want to cultivate pro-social behaviors, I want to think about effective ways to teach about that behavior and then provide opportunities within the lesson to think about what it means to put that behavior into practice in relationship to all living beings and the natural world. So imagine that I want to cultivate kindness in my lesson and I have that as the focus. I want to think about connections to interpersonal relationships with people and our global community. I want to think about connections to the animals with whom we live and other animals with whom we may not know on a personal level. And cleaning up our local neighborhood to help the people and animals in our community, as well as promoting clean and healthy oceans on a larger scale. So an example of how to turn this into a lesson. We created a lesson called Appreciation for Others, and it's an early ed lesson that's intended to foster kind and appreciative behaviors. And the way we teach it is we have role-playing scenarios where youth consider an action to demonstrate kindness based on the scenario. And the scenarios in the lesson relate to situations that involve other people, other species, and our environment. So these scenarios relate to different beings in our world, and then they take these kind actions, and then they can reflect and discuss how the actions were similar and different. Similarly, we sometimes analyze systems and the root cause of harm caused by those systems and potential ways to support and transfer systems into more just, compassionate, sustainable structures. So for example, in our Strategies for Change program, youth learn about systems of exploitation within our economic system and the influence that consumer choices, lobbying, and spreading awareness can have on challenging that exploitation. And then they learn about the exploitation of people, of other species, and our environment within that context. And they think about the root cause of these issues, the similarities and differences of these issues, and how the 3 strategies for change that they learned about can be applied to each of these situations. Okay, and lastly, our focus might actually be a very specific issue, and we might consider that topic from a holistic point of view. So for example, if I wanted to teach about the fashion industry, I would have youth delve into media influence on our clothing choices and how clothing choices, the working conditions in sweatshops, the way animals are raised and killed for fur, leather, wool, and silk industries, and to consider the resources used to produce clothing. So they can consider their personal choices and systemic actions that can be taken to reduce harm caused to people, animals, and the environment related to fashion. Now you might be thinking, our organization has a very specific issue, and I might teach about fur, but the other issues are a little outside of our organization. You can easily add these additional components to analyze the fashion industry by a simple essential question and some reflective critical thinking questions at the end, so that the core of your lesson is focused on the topic you want to convey, but you add these additional elements so that you build the curiosity of students and they think about it from a bigger perspective beyond your classroom. When developing your own activity, lesson, or unit, consider what is your focus, and then think about how that focus relates to people, other species, and the environment. Provide accurate information on the topic. Find ways to foster empathy and irreverence. Include critical thinking, and find ways to encourage youth empowerment and problem solving. And it all goes back to ourselves and our own responsibility to these issues and what we can do about them. So I want you to think about the benefit of teaching from this broad-based perspective. Youth who maybe have more of an interest in one of these 3 areas will recognize how these other issues are connected and maybe increase their interest in issues that they hadn't otherwise necessarily thought about or cared as much about. I was teaching a high school program with a multi-lesson series. And on the very first day, one of the students rose her hand and she said in a very uninterested way, "Is this going to be about animals?" And I explained to her that we were going to be teaching about all different topics, some focused on people, some focused on animals, some focused on the environment, and that we were really thinking about ourselves and our own values and how we apply our values to others and the way that we are in the world. So the very first week, I taught about oppressive child labor. And the student who had asked the question on the first day about if this was going to be about animals was extremely engaged. And it was clear that she really cared about the equity of human rights in all people. The second week, I taught about puppy mills and animal homelessness. And she was surprisingly very, very interested in the topic, one of the most engaged students. And from that week until the next, she went to a local pet store and asked the owners where their dogs came from, what the conditions, their living conditions were like, if they were aware that they were selling animals while there was an animal homeless crisis going on in animal shelters. And she came back the next week and shared this, and she was really surprised to find out that the owners or the workers there knew very little, had very little answers for her. And I don't think she would have been that engaged and that passionate about the issue had I not taught about the human rights issue the week before, because she saw a connection between using someone for your profit and that suffering. We don't have to equate suffering, that if someone has suffering, it's concerning. And if we can prevent that suffering, why wouldn't we try? There's countless connections that can be made within humane education topics. Some are obvious, but some take more thought, research, and deep systems thinking. The intention of making connections is not intended to take away from one's main goal or objective, but instead to achieve one's goal and objective while utilizing the content as a means for achieving a larger societal goal. For example, if you are teaching humane education and your main goal is to increase animal adoption and reduce animal homelessness, keep this as your focus, but consider what is the larger concept connected to your topic. Maybe, how can we ensure everyone has a home? Or what is our responsibility to the needs of others? If you're teaching a humane education program and your main goal is to increase housing for people and to reduce housing insecurity, consider the larger concept. Maybe it's the same as the one before. How can we ensure everyone has a home? Or what is our responsibility to the needs of others? If you're teaching a program and your main goal is to conserve resources and increase fair and equitable distribution of resources to people, consider the larger concept connected to this topic. How can we ensure everyone has their basic needs met, including shelter? What is our responsibility to the needs of others? So the larger essential question can essentially be the same, whether you're teaching about animal homelessness, the homelessness of people, or fair resource distribution and meeting the needs of others. And you can keep that core focus, but add these essential questions, add some critical thinking questions, and when you have time, really see how these issues overlap, and that sometimes someone's need to protect their animal might lead to their housing insecurity if they don't have, they can't find low-income housing that takes in animals, or if they're in a domestic violence situation and they can't find shelter that will take them and their animal companion. So sometimes there's really specific concrete connections, and sometimes they're more larger philosophical connections. But either way, try to make them where you can, and we'll have a much larger far reach than I think we ever expected. So we have a new initiative at Heart that I wanted to share with you that might help some of you to get started. Our new Heart Network is geared toward animal protection organizations, and we're inviting humane education practitioners to complete our membership form, which can be found on our website. And the registration is open, and it'll officially launch in March. But the idea is that members will receive monthly bulletins, each on a specific topic, and the bulletins will provide activities, lessons, tips, and resources related to that topic. And while the focus is on animal topics, we will make authentic connections when applicable. For example, our first bulletin is titled Everyone Has Feelings, and there'll be a component on social emotional learning to help youth become more aware of their own feelings, as well as the feelings of other species. So when we're more aware of our own feelings and the feelings of others, we can cultivate more respect and appreciation. So it's really about the commonality of compassion and thinking critically about what it means to extend our compassion to all people, all species, and the natural world. And if that is the lens that we can teach through and we encourage others to live by, what a more compassionate, just, sustainable world we can create for all. So going back to the story from the beginning, when the woman who had heard this on the news met my friend and colleague years later, and they discussed an ethical dilemma relating to people and other species, she said, "How can anyone put the needs of animals in front of the needs of human beings?" And my colleague simply responded by saying, "It's not about putting anyone's needs in front of another. It's about seeing if we can find a solution that meets the needs of everyone." And from this simple statement, the woman reflected and recognized the commonality of compassion. Let's bring the same framework to the youth with whom we work. Thank you so much. And I want to once again thank the Humane Education Coalition for inviting me to be part of their first ever Humane Summit, and thank all of you for being with me here today. If you have any questions or comments about teaching through a comprehensive lens, please contact me at kim@teachheart.org and visit her at teachheart.org. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be with you.
This concludes our speaker session. Thank you so much for joining us. You can learn more here or by clicking the resource links in the summit. We hope you've enjoyed this speaker session and that you'll join us for another one soon. Please consider making a donation to the Humane Education Coalition to help us continue providing programs and events like the Humane Summit. We rely on your support to help create a more compassionate, just, and sustainable future through education. Visit hecoalition.org/give to contribute today. Thanks again.